It's time for the review 2020 and of course the outlook 2021. So before we get straight into it, I'm just going to briefly answer a couple of questions I received via email and then we go straight into the topic, but just 90 seconds about the answer. So a couple of questions arrived. People ask, will the interviews come back? Yes, interviews will be back in January. There will be an interview in German and English on the different channels. Be aware of the fact that there's an English channel and a German channel where I interview different people and have different topics. Just in case you speak German, you might be interested in that as well. People ask, where's the central place where I get all the information, what you published, etc. The central place where you get all the information is the expert letter. The expert letter is 100% content at free guarantee. No advertising, because I'm always very annoyed with so-called newsletters which have advertising only. There is zero advertising in my expert letter. Just go on expert-letter.nb-networks.com, sign up there, and here we go. More than 150 issues published already, and these more than 150 editions receive very good feedback, and you get all the information from one place. So the week will be the following, because that's what people also ask. How will the week be in 2021? On Monday, you always get an interview in my podcast. On Tuesday, you get my own podcast where you hear myself talking. On Wednesday, there is the expert letter where you find all the information just in place, plus the articles, which you only get for free via the expert letter. If you go directly on my leadership magazine and you read more than 3 articles per month, you have to pay for the rest. Via the expert letter, it is always for free. So you have 3 days of content every week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you have 4 days to digest and read, because some people read or listen to all the content directly when they see it. Other people might wait a couple of days, or they have work or something else to do, and then they listen to it during the weekend. No problem. 3 days content, 4 days to digest. A question which also was posed to me quite frequently, because people listened to the episode we had 2 or 3 weeks ago where I talked longer than the usual 15 minutes, and they said that they liked it, and I didn't expect that, quite frankly. I thought it's the shorter the better, and yes, I know that many people don't have that much time. I'm not going to do podcasts which are an hour and a half long, no worries, but the 15 minutes and not a single second longer, that rule will not sustain in 2021. It will be around 15 minutes. Plus or minus maybe 5 minutes, we will see. But I don't set a certain time. When there is more to say, like we had 2 or 3 weeks ago, then I am going to say what I have to say. Thank you very much for the positive feedback. And some people ask if I'm going to publish audiobooks next year. So first, thank you very much that you like to listen to me with the charming accent you hear here. You know, I am German, so I am very surprised about the success of this podcast. I have to be dead honest with that, because I started the podcast in May of 2020. I thought in the first year, my goal was to have 10,000 people who listen to this podcast, just gave me their time. 10,000 people in 12 months. We are now 6 months in, and we have more than 16,000 people who gave me their time. There's not a single penny of paid advertising. It is all just organically, all just driven by content, no advertising, no sales, no pitch, nothing. So thank you very much to give me your time and the trust you invest in our relationship. Is greatly appreciated, and there's more to come in 2021. However, I also have to work getting the articles written, the expert letter up there, the podcast, the interview, getting in touch with the experts, editing, cutting. That is a significant investment in time. I will try to get some audiobooks out there, but I'm not going to give the guarantee, because fortunately bookings are going very well, especially with our digital offers in these days. We are very successful. It goes very well for me, which I'm very thankful for. Some people say audiobooks, it's a maybe, not a yes, not a no. It's a maybe. I hope I can do a yes, but my time is limited as anyone else's time is limited as well. And also, people ask me, when I have more questions, how can I discuss that with you? Well, very, very easy. Just send me an email to nb@nb-networks.com. Some people then ask, do you charge me for minute number 1? No, absolutely not. Of course, I'm not going to give away free consultancy, but just having a nice chat, of course, doesn't cost anything. That's just normal. Just drop me an email and we take it from there. And now we get straight into the outlook for 2021 and the review for 2020. And of course, there are aspects where you say these are the big losers, and there are aspects where you say these are the big winners. So when we look at the big losers, three main aspects here. Big losers 2020. Number one, change-resistant management. I am, quite frankly, astonished about the amount of companies, and I say companies here, not organizations. You may have realized normally I always say organizations, but in this case, it is really about companies. We have a global pandemic, COVID-19, coronavirus, ravaging around the planet and changes everything we have ever seen in the world of business. And now people just, in some companies, they just kept on going like nothing happened. And they sent people back to the office as soon as they could, and they asked them to come back as soon as they could. And they simply tried to pretend nothing really happened. And by the way, these are the same companies who have motivational posters in the elevator and say, oh, it's all about the mission, vision, value statements. No question, mission, vision, value statements are important when they are built up properly, from the organizational level to the tactical level to the strategical level, having a vision together. It's a really time-consuming process. If you simply call an advertising or a marketing agency and they just put up something for you, surprisingly, that's not going to work, because people laugh at you for the reason that many of the long-term employees, they survived the last three mission, vision, value attempts. So they're going to survive the fourth one, and they take it as seriously as I just mentioned or alluded to. Let's put it that way. Of course, change-resistant management. People say you have to change, we have to adapt to markets, but suddenly we have a global pandemic and senior management doesn't do anything. Maybe they have no idea what to do. There is no shame in admitting that. But simply not doing anything and just hoping that your markets come back, good luck with that. I hope you have a lot of savings on your account, because markets will not come back the same way. Markets will not be the same after COVID-19, if there is an after in 2021, which is debatable at best, to be fair. So change-resistant management, just keep on going like we did before. Maybe you have that one brilliant product. Maybe you have no competitors. Maybe you have just clients who only buy with you. But let's face it, how realistic is that? So when you are a change-resistant management, it's going to be a tough time for you. So aspect number two, the non-learning company. And here I say company. Often people realize I say organization, and I say organization deliberately because a company, a business, is driving on profit. We have many organizations out there, the public hand or charities, not founded for profit. But under COVID-19 rules, these organizations developed quickly because they had to. They didn't have the financial foundation. They didn't have the savings to wait and see. However, companies suddenly thought, why not just wait a minute and see what happens? So the non-learning company, together with the change-resistant management, forms what is aspect number three, bad leadership. Good leadership means you can ask the questions of why, the sense, the idea, the concept, the meaning of what are you doing with your company, and why should people follow your vision, your task, your mission, your objectives, your goals, your KPIs, or whatever else you put up there. If you cannot answer that question, and by the way, the answer, we just keep on going, is a pretty weak one, because people know from their own experience and scientific evidence that just keep going is not really a sustainable concept. So bad leadership is once more one of the big losing aspects for companies, and I deliberately say companies here, for companies in 2021. So are there winners? Of course. Of course, there are winners. When you look into digitization, massive winner of 2020, and of course will be the winner in 2021 as well. And of course, now people say, okay, that's an IT issue, none of my business. Wrong again. Of course, you had some IT issues depending on what kind of organization you work in. And now I say organization because that affects every single organization. You might have issues, but these issues are often not the IT's fault. I'll just give you an example. Maybe you realize some companies banned the tool Zoom just off their IT list. They said Zoom can't be used. And when you asked them why, they said, oh, security issues. So first, there were minor security issues. And by the way, every single tool had such issues because no one expected that there's such an uptake in users for digital meetings. But suddenly you realized that many of these so-called security issues, called Zoom bombing, people entering meeting rooms, well, people could enter your meeting rooms for one reason. You used a public URL, so a public link, a public hyperlink, which you send to people, no password. People just click on a link which you can guess by just changing a number, one higher, one lower. You just change a number and then you are in there with no password. Why do users do that? Well, because you didn't train them properly. Why didn't you train them? Because you didn't want to invest. Because you said, oh, these tools are all so self-explanatory. Or you just booked someone who's really cheap, delivering training for minimum rates. And of course, what you get then, if you put garbage in, you get garbage out. If people have no clue what's wrong with using public URLs with no password, then please don't blame the organization behind it. Zoom, the company Zoom at the moment, of course, due to COVID-19, is worth more than 10 airlines, 10 large-scale airlines acting globally together. Only the meeting tool Zoom. So why do IT departments start to ban tools? It's not the fault of the IT in many cases. Of course, sometimes you have bad leadership in IT as well. Bad department leader might happen, but that is the exception, not the rule. The rule is, unfortunately, that senior leadership, often on board level, says if something goes wrong in the IT is to blame. So the IT department leader gets pressure left, right, and center. When something happens, when we get hacked, when anything goes wrong, you are to blame. And of course, with that attitude of a zero support, which means there is no bonus, there's only angry people on the board facing you. So when everything's running well, they say, well, that's what we pay you for, so thanks. And the thanks is everything you get. As soon as something goes wrong, they want to chop your head off and blame everything to the IT. So of course, when you lead like that, it's a leadership issue, and your IT blocks and bans everything they can just to protect themselves. It is once more not an IT issue, but a leadership issue. But getting back to the main point, digitization, one of the big winners in 2021. And by the way, you should be professionally trained. I delivered 11 days in 2020 on site. That is the lowest number since I'm in business. So 11 days on site, mainly before the pandemic even started. Everything else was delivered remotely from my notebook, and it worked perfectly well. But the reason for that is I was professionally trained. My first employer, GlaxoSmithKline, had medical web TV, online training for doctors at the end of the 1990s, an absolute revolution. When I worked for New Horizons, a large computer learning, Microsoft's largest certified partner for learning solutions, they had a tool called Illuminate, beginning 2000s. When I became self-employed, from the very beginning, I started to deliver services on a global level in a digital way, which means so-called remote training, remote coaching, remote learning. But of course, it's horribly boring when suddenly someone just pops up a PowerPoint slide and talks and talks and talks. And I can tell you, there was one point where even I thought, I'm not sure how this is going to be. And that was in December. In December, I had a full 4-day workshop. 4 days, from 9 a.m. in the morning till 5 p.m. in the evening. They booked me for 4 days for leadership change management. And I thought 4 days in front of the computer, that might be a challenge. But fortunately, not only the group was very active, but when you do it interactive, when you are able, after you've been professionally trained to do so, you are able to deliver great content online. The problem is many people were successful in training because they were nice people, could interact in the room, they were a bit funny, had a bit of humor. So it was some sort of entertaining session with a bit of content on the side. And suddenly that does not work anymore because you're not in the room. And that means you certainly need great content. So without great content, you're not going to survive the digital world. That's just an important hint. And when you still book really cheap trainers, speakers, and coaches, just stop doing that because they have no clue how to deliver anything which is even on an acceptable level online. So big winner, digitization. And aspect number 2, of course, goes along with that. Aspect number 2 is the modern workplace. Not in a technical way. Of course, technical tools, for example, for Microsoft are very important. But the modern workplace also means that the processes are in place and that your management, your senior management, supports these processes. So, for example, the modern workplace means you have a solution for remote working. And by the way, let's take Microsoft as a positive example. Microsoft, large corporation, not easy to change. People are not happy about risk. Many people in large organizations are risk averse to avoid the responsibility and the accountability. So what is the Microsoft very complicated guideline for remote work? Their guideline says offer as much flexibility as possible. 6 words. That's it. 50% work from home, absolutely guaranteed, no matter where you work. There doesn't need to be any reasoning. 50% work from home, always possible. The other 50%, if you want to have more than 50%, must be agreed with management. And by the way, some people like to return to the offices, mostly when people are working in an environment with good leadership. When you look at why people do not want to return to the office, well, most likely they are happy that they are not around with you anymore. It is a very straightforward way of feedback. When they don't want to return, there is a reason for that, because people realize that when they work from home, suddenly work and private life merges. You might work a lot more. Many people now have a lot more to do, according to edX, the largest learning platform, a cooperation of Harvard University and the MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. 38% have more to do than before. So some of them might think, I like to have the separation again between work and private life. On the other hand, do I want to get back to these people and their bad leadership? No, maybe then I just stay at home, because at home I can disconnect from these people simply by disabling my Wi-Fi and say, sorry, no connection. Good luck. So the modern workplace is a must, but the modern workplace only works when you have, and this is part 3 from the winning aspects of 2020 and the outlook for 2021, the learning organization. You need an organization which is actively learning. You need high qualified people who help you with learning. Of course, you can do it internally, externally. But if you think that there will be a way that you get back to normal, that's what many people ask me, when do we get back to normal? And then they say, oh, there is the new normal. No, there's not only the new normal. And now we come to the top tips for 2021 and the outlook for 2021. 3 main aspects you have for 2021. Aspect number 1 is change is constant. Change is the new normal, as Ilya Greshkovich, an international keynote speaker, said. And change is the new normal means it is constantly going to be a change. It affects me, it affects you, it affects each and every one of us. If you still apply models like saying, oh, you unfreeze the organization, then you do the change, and then you refreeze the organization, the old model from Kurt Lewin from 1947. There's a reason why the model is from 1947. It's not bad, you can do it, but still it's not the most modern approach for a reason. And the very important aspect here is that change is the new normal means you have to constantly be able to not only lead, but also sell, market, develop, innovate, everything on the go while having multiple changes, which means multi-project management, often international context, multilinguality, etc., etc. All that needs to be managed. And that means don't assume that you will get back to a situation where you say there is no change. Change is constant. Change is the new normal, as Ilya Greshkovich said, as mentioned before. So very good leadership is a must, because without very good leadership, there is no change. And I'm going to give you an example. One of my friends works for a very large corporation in Germany, and they wanted to implement a new IT process model. Then, of course, people said, well, someone needs to teach us these new methods and also tell us what are the pitfalls, best practices, good practice, etc., etc. So we need training. Answer from the organization, oh, times of COVID, we don't know, there will be no training, but all of you get a book. I'm not making this up. So they got a book. Then they said, could you please read this book because we have so much to do. Could you please read this book outside office hours so you can read it at home, personal. And then they called it professional development, which of course is a joke. So they expected people to read it at home, which of course no one did. 3 months later, the department leader my friend received an email where they asked, "Oh, are you now implementing and working with a newly implemented IT process model?" And he said, "Yes." And a day later, senior management celebrated how well they did with the new change. That is how non-sustainable change works. You have everything on paper. In this case, not even on paper. It's a complete pseudo change. You need very good leadership. Without excellent leadership, no change will sustainably be in place or even take place. Because excellent leadership is needed for change, for innovation, for sustainable success. That includes leadership, that includes sales, your internal department, your external department, absolutely anyone. Because the reason number one why people leave an organization still is the behavior of the leaders. And as edX, the largest learning platform, which I mentioned before, the Harvard MIT Corporation, they did a survey, and the survey where more than 100,000 people took place, so that's definitely representative. 2/3 at the moment are thinking of doing something else, which means they realize now what they did for years is not what they want to do. And bad leadership makes it easier for them to leave. And let's face it, the talent situation in the future is not going to become any easier. Aspect number 3 of top tips for 2021, the foundation of everything you do is science and experience and practice application. And I deliberately said and. So we have many people who have great scientific results, but when you only take science, it means you don't put anything in practice, they have no clue about the real world out there often, and then it won't work. It is very theoretical. So science alone is not the answer. And by the way, scientists know that. They are not offended by it. On the other hand, when you only take experience, it is something which is not peer reviewed. It can be heavily biased. When people say this is my experience, that they can have a personal agenda. There is no proof. There is no evidence. If you take experience alone, you will do and perform a lot of mistakes, and that will be costly mistakes, very expensive. And especially in the situation right now, you might not want to go down that road. And when you only take practice orientation, you have people who put things in place. On the other hand, nothing's documented. When the people leave, no one has an idea what happens. All the departments do their own little thing, and they don't work together, they don't cooperate, and of course they don't collaborate at all, which means that all the synthesis, all the benefits you can have of collaborating together will be lost. And that means top tip for 2021, besides number 1, change is a constant and change is the new normal, as Ilya Greshkovich said. 2, very good leadership is a must to have change, innovation, sustainable success, no matter if in leadership, sales, or anywhere else. It is a must and the foundation of everything you do. And aspect number 3, the foundation of everything you start from, everything you do, is science and experience and practice orientation, practice application. So that of course now means, well, there is quite something to do in 2021. Absolutely. If you want to have a chat about that, just drop me an email, nb@nb-networks.com. Happy to chat with you. Of course, if you have any additional aspects where you say, I'd like to talk about that aspect or I have a question about that, drop me an email and we just take it from there. Many of the aspects I talk about this year were based and driven by people who contacted me via email. So at the end of this year, I have a couple of things to say. First, thank you very much. You went above and beyond. With more than 16,000 people listening to this, I am truly overwhelmed. I never expected that. So thank you very much for trusting me. And thank you very much for giving me the most valuable thing you have. And that is, especially in today's world, that is your time. Of course, I wish you all the best to implement what I just told you in your organization. If you want any help, just contact me. And now I wish you a great year 2021. Stay healthy. So at the end of this podcast, there is only one thing for me left to say, and that is what I always say at the end of my podcast. Thank you very much for your time.